And we're back again with step 7. Write your response. This is where you're writing your response to the client. Let's do this on a piece of paper. First, your response must be in the correct format given the product that you noted in step 1. For example, if you were asked to write a memo, then you have to set up the memo structure. Notice what I've got. I've got the to, the from, the subject, and the date. Second, always start with a short paragraph that introduces your response. For instance, the first paragraph of a memo to the controller by, say, a co-op student might be, "Thank you for meeting with me last week Friday. I have completed the work you requested and below have provided my analysis and recommendations." A very short introduction is important because it shows that you have recognized your audience and their communication needs. Third, provide an overall heading for your first required, if there are multiple requireds. In our case, you'll note that the subject of the memo is Financial Reporting Issues and Adjustments. This indicates that there was only one required, so I don't need to do a required heading. However, if there was more than one required, then my subject would be different, and the very first thing I would do after the introduction paragraph is to provide the required as a heading. Remember, you produce these headings because they keep you on track and help the marker see that you are addressing each of the requireds. Since there was no two requireds here, I'm not going to put it in. But the very next thing I have to do is analyze each of the issues in the order that I ranked them in. For financial reporting issues, the most common format for your response is as follows. First, the heading, the issue name. By underlying it, I highlight its importance. Next, indicate what the client did. This should be a repeat of the case facts, but it helps to clarify exactly what's going on. In this case, I might write something like this. It's important to reiterate what the client did for clarification purposes. Immediately after indicating what the client did, you want to analyze the issue. In this case, because we're doing financial reporting, you will use the standards and apply them to the case facts and analyze what should be done. Notice that while you're writing this, you are referring to your case plan and you're referring to your case. This would have been one of the issues that you had ranked, and you ranked it first. Probably a good idea because revenue recognition should always be first. Not always be first, but often be first. All right. So you are looking at the plan and you're looking at the case facts, and this is where you do your analysis. Notice you are doing the analysis as you're writing your response. You can put a heading on here saying analysis. That's totally acceptable. So let's assume I analyze it against ASPE standards. ASPE revenue recognition criteria are as follows. Risks and rewards of ownership have been transferred, not met. Notice that this indicates immediately that the client has not met the required standards. I then use the case facts to explain this position. Must provide warranty coverage for 2 years. That's a case fact. Transfer must be determined based on the passage of time. That's part of the standards. Standards require you use percentage of completion. 1/24 of the risks and rewards are transferred at the end of each month. Let me just page down so we can continue with the standards. Revenue can be measured reliably. Met. Total revenue over 2 years, $12,000. Collection is reasonably assured. Met. Customer pays in full on the date the warranty is sold. I finished my analysis using the standards and the case facts. At the end of my analysis, I need to make a recommendation that follows my analysis. In this example, my recommendation would be, recommendation, revenue must be recognized over time, 1/24 of the $12,000 at the end of each month. Notice that my recommendation follows my analysis. Depending on who your audience is, you may want to include the adjusting entry. In this case, we have to. We're writing to the controller and we were asked to provide adjustments. Because of that, underneath the recommendation, I'm going to add, the adjusting entry you need to record is debit warranty revenue for $12,000 and credit unearned warranty revenue for $12,000. It might be that I need to do a different entry. Let's assume that 3 months have already passed. Then I would do a debit to warranty revenue of $10,500 and a credit to unearned warranty revenue for $10,500, whatever is appropriate given the case facts. Finally, indicate the impact of your recommendation on what is important to the client. For instance, if the client wants to obtain a bank loan in order to expand their business, they likely want net income to be as high as possible. They might also be concerned about the bank covenant. Assume the covenant is a debt-to-equity ratio. Immediately under your recommendation, indicate the impact of your recommendation on what the client considers most important. For instance, I might add something such as, impact: revenues will decline by $12,000 as well as income before income taxes. Liabilities will increase and equity will decrease, which will worsen your debt to equity ratio. Notice I did not recalculate the debt to equity ratio at this point. That's because I likely have other issues to analyze, and recalculations of a ratio every time I make a recommendation is a waste of time. Instead, I quickly indicate the overall impact, and then at the end of analyzing all of the issues, when I cover the big picture, I'll recalculate the ratio taking into account all of my recommendation. But under every single recommendation, I will provide the impact on the things that are most important to the main user. Notice the format for analyzing financial reporting issues. Start with the heading. Name the issue and be specific. What did the client do, if anything? Maybe they didn't do anything yet, but then you should indicate that they asked you to determine how to record something. Then, your analysis. Apply the standards using the case facts. Next, make a recommendation that follows your analysis. And finally, indicate the impact on what is important to your client, which you should know from your plan. Repeat, repeat, repeat. This is for every single issue until you're finished. At the end, we then provide a concluding statement. This is the big picture. After you've analyzed all of your issues, indicate what the overall impact of all of your recommendation is to the things that are important to your client. This may involve you producing an exhibit of your own. If you decide to include an exhibit, perhaps recalculating the debt-to-equity ratio, be sure that your exhibit includes the following: a title, for instance, debt-to-equity ratio calculation. The purpose of the exhibit: to recalculate the ratio given my recommendations. Clearly label each step. Show your calculations in detail, including formulas that you use. Make sure you have a conclusion. Tell them what this exhibit shows, such as the debt-to-equity ratio worsened by XX and is now YY. Remember to state any assumptions you make with regards to your exhibit at the bottom of the exhibit. This makes it so that the marker knows what you are doing. Once you finish that, go back to the big picture and make a concluding statement. For instance, you might say something like, my recommendations indicate that the debt-to-equity ratio is going to worsen to YY. See Exhibit A. I recommend that you immediately book an appointment with the bank so that you can discuss alternatives with regards to your loan. That's it, the basic steps for analyzing a case. Remember, you have to apply these steps while you are practicing cases so that it becomes second nature for you to use them while writing exams. In closing, I'd like to point out a few things you should remember when you're writing a case. The plan is an outline of your response. Use it as such when you write your response. Effective plans organize case information logically so you can write an integrated, well-written response. Tailor your response to the case facts. Do not write a generic response. For instance, if you had simply written out the criteria for revenue recognition without applying the criteria to the case facts, you wouldn't get any marks. No marker expects perfection in your answer. The focus will be on whether you are doing the appropriate analysis given the information provided and what the client asked you to do. If you don't practice, you won't get better at case writing, and If you don't practice enough, you won't get fast enough at writing cases to cover all the issues. In a future video, I plan to apply this planning process to solve a case, but you should start today doing just that. Take a case from your course and apply these steps so that you can become better at case writing. Thank you so much for watching my videos. I hope to see you in the next one.